If you want to see me turn this guitar's paint job from this to this for about 30 bucks and no special equipment, then keep watching. What's going on, everyone? You're watching the Iron Gordon channel. Thank you for being here. Today I got a commission job where I had to give this guitar a metal flake finish, but I had to do it on a budget, and I'm going to show you how I did it using only spray paint you can buy at most big box hardware stores or on Amazon, and I will have all the links to the products I use in the description below. Let's get into the project. Check it out, there is an absolute art form to spray painting. I think most people screw it up because they're simply not patient with it. And it's an easy fix, but I'm going to explain to you those critical details at the end of this video. So you're going to want to watch the whole thing through. As I take this thing apart, I've come down to the knobs and I really don't want to snip these wires because I'm not the best solderer. I'm not the best at soldering, so I'm just going to tape around the pickup and hope for the best. Before I start sanding, I like to wipe down the whole thing with some alcohol just to really clean off any of the grease, any of the leftover burrito juice, whatever might be on there from people touching it. And that way I'm not actually sanding the oil and the greases into the open pores of the paint. Once it's all nice and clean, I wrap tape around the parts that I don't want to accidentally hit with the sandpaper. Okay, now that the guitar is taken apart, it is cleaned, it is taped up, we are ready to sand. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start here with 220 grit and I'm going to wet sand the whole thing down. And the goal here with sanding is to remove any shine on the guitar. And once the shine is gone, you know that the paint has a new fresh surface to stick onto. Update. The client gave me direct permission to snip off these wires. Apparently he has a guy that will rebuild the guitar for him, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the pickup. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut as close as I can to the back side of the knob so that gives the next guy as much wire as possible that he needs to solder it on. And then also I'm going to reapply the masking tape around any of the edges that were sanded because there might be dust trapped inside the tape and I don't want to accidentally paint over all that. First up, we have filler primer. Now, filler primer will fill in small imperfections that are on the body and gives you a nice sandable surface to paint on top of. The first coat, you should lay on a little bit thin and let that dry for, I don't know, like 10 minutes. Now, the second coat, you can lay it on a little bit thicker, and that's where you're going to actually try to get full coverage and then let it dry for like, I don't know, like 30 minutes. After about 30 minutes, your paint should be completely dry to the touch and ready to sand. We're going to wet sand this primer with 1000 grit paper. Now, sanding with water will help keep your sandpaper from clogging real quick, and it also provides a little bit of lubricant between the paper and the surface you're sanding. And that's all we're doing here is we're just knocking down any imperfections that might have shown through after painting. Okay, now after the filler primer has been sanded, I'm going to go back over it with my alcohol mixture, make sure all the dust is removed, and make sure everything's nice and smooth, ready for that first base coat. For the base coat, I'm using Rust-Oleum Metallic Silver. This stuff looks great out of the can. You want to lay down the first coat a little light. You're not trying to get full coverage here. You just want to give the next coat of paint something to bite onto. And let that dry for, I don't know, like 10 minutes. And for coat number 2, you're going to want to go a little bit heavier, but with caution because metallics have a tendency to show runs and drips really easy. And let that dry for, I don't know, like 10 minutes. Glitter coat. This is where the magic happens. This is what's going to give us that overall metal flake look. That first coat, you're going to want to just dust on there, get a nice coat on, and let that dry for, I don't know, like 10 minutes. And for coat number 2, this is where you can determine how much of the effect you want to achieve. In my case, I basically dumped the entire can onto the guitar. I wanted to get as heavy as a metal flake as I could get out of this can. And let that dry for, I don't know, like 10 minutes. Okay, last but not least, we have the glaze coat. Now, I'm using a Rust-Oleum triple thick glaze coat, and the idea behind this is that the glitter comes out textured, and that's not going to feel good up against your skin or against clothing. So we want to bury that glitter underneath a thick layer of clear coat, and that's what we're going to accomplish with this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down probably about 5 coats of this clear coat on top of the glitter, just to make sure that glitter is completely covered, letting each coat dry for about 10 minutes before applying the next one. Now, according to Rust-Oleum's own website, it's an acrylic-based resin. From my knowledge and my experience, acrylic tends to be a little bit more benign so that you can apply paint on top of it later if you wanted to, and it's not going to have any weird reaction with the paint, like crinkle up on you or anything. All the labels on the can say that the paint is completely dry in 24 hours. I'm going to let this guitar hang here for the next couple days and just let it completely harden up so that'll prepare us for the next step. So I ended up letting this guitar hang here for about a week. That's just the way timing worked out for me. But to be honest with you, this is pretty good right here. You could stop here if you wanted to. All the glitter's covered, it feels nice. There's a couple bumps and imperfections that you feel, but it's good enough to use. So if you wanted to stop here, you could, and you have a beautiful finish on a guitar, and you did it all for less than 30 bucks. If you want to take it to the next level, keep watching. Okay, something that happens when you spray paint is called orange peel, and what that is that the surface of the thing you just painted looks just like an orange peel. And what that is if we had a crosscut section of our paint job, our clear coat would have a bunch of peaks and valleys in it. Now what we're going to do using a foam sanding pad and some high grit sandpaper is we're going to knock all those peaks down to the valleys, and that's going to give us a nice smooth surface to start polishing on top of. That's ultimately going to give us that high gloss finish we want in the end. Okay, so starting out the wet sanding process, I chose 1000 grit, and that might seem a bit aggressive, but I did have a run in the paint that I needed to take care of, so I went ahead and hit that one area with the 1000 grit paper, and then once that was flattened out, I bumped it up to 1500 grit paper and did the entire guitar in that. And then once that felt nice and smooth, I bumped it up one more time to 2000 grit paper, again keeping the sandpaper nice and wet the entire time. Also, this is a part where you want to be real careful that you're not sanding back through your clear coat. You don't want to hit that paint, and if you were to sand all the way through your clear coat, unfortunately you would have to shoot the clear coat again. But if you didn't, we can move on to the next step, which is going to be polishing. Now for this step, I'm using the Guire's Ultimate Compound and some microfiber towels. This part's really simple, but it is a little tedious. All you do, put a little compound onto the rag and swirl it around on top of the paint until it starts to shine. You want to make sure you get polish onto all the surfaces that you hit with the sandpaper so that that dull comes back to a shine. You know what? I think the results speak for themselves. Okay, so those critical details I was explaining in the very beginning of the video, they go like this. If you're super observant, maybe you notice a continued pattern in my video.
And let that dry for, I don't know, like 10 minutes?
That's it. That's all I did. I did 10 minutes between each coat, with the exception of that one primer coat that I had to wet sand. Every coat of paint I shot on within 10 minutes of the first coat. 10 minutes based on the temperature and the humidity of your area should be about enough time for that first coat to flash off enough that you can shoot another coat onto it without any ill effects. The cans state you should apply your second coat within 1 hour or after 48 hours. Also, another big tip, just follow the directions that are on the back of the can. The manufacturer's always going to know how their product works the best. I mean, what do I know?
I'm just a mediocre artist on YouTube.
Speaking of that, this is only part one of a two-part video I am doing with this guitar. The next video I will be putting candy paint on this with some graphics and some striping, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. If you are new here, please consider subscribing, leave me a thumbs up, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Again, I have all the product I use linked in the description. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll try better next time.